And we have a very special treat for you this afternoon. The three Blue Men and one of the drummers from the show last night, opening night performance here in Johannesburg, are joining us. We're all going to answer any questions that you have. And this is the first time on the entire world tour that the press has gotten to have this kind of talk back with the cast from the show. So it's a really special treat. We're very excited to be here. The show went very well last night. And we're all very excited to be in South Africa, in Johannesburg. So thank you for having us, and I'd like to introduce, this is Barney Haas, Tom Rackett, Will Wender, and Jeff Sinclair. These are the three Blue Men, and that's one of our fantastic drummers on the end there. So fire away.
Okay, we're going to start with Dave.
Hi guys. First of all, I'd like to say what a great show it was last night. But I've got an interesting question for Joe. That's you, hey? Right. Because you can't tell with, you know. You had a very interesting story that I'd like you to share with us. There's not many artists that go and watch a group as a youngster when their mother buys them a ticket for the show, and then they become part of that group eventually. Can you tell us briefly your story from when you went to watch the show to how you actually became a Blue Man?
Yeah, well, I was studying at drama school at the time, and I played drums in a band when I was a teenager. And my mum called me up and she was like, "Oh, I've heard about this show called Blue Man Group, so I bought you and my younger brother a ticket to see the show." And I'd never heard of it, and yeah, when I went to see it, it blew my mind. It just seemed like a perfect fit of like what I wanted to do creatively, and yeah, and then I guess that translates into it being a dream job, because I sat there and I never, as a training actor, you kind of, you know, you never think that you're going to hit those heights because you're constantly told that being an actor is so difficult. And, you know, I think we're some of the luckiest, not just actors, but some of the luckiest people in the world to get to do what we do. And yeah, so it's all thanks to my mum that I even found out about the show. And then I really enjoyed it, and then something transpired, the planets collided to allow me to, yeah, somehow get it eventually. Many years later, like 6 years later, because it was in the West End in London 2006, and then I was a Blue Man by 2012.
I first saw it in 2006 in London.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my dad got me a ticket, and I went and watched.
Oh, so you got the same kind of story as him then?
Yeah,
He just doesn't brag about it.
Oh, all right. I noticed, yeah. Okay.
I'm always networking.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a, because we do meet and greet after the show. After I got the gig, I looked back at my my meet and greet photo, and I had a photo with one of the guys that I subsequently performed with again in New York, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, and he was like, oh god, it makes me feel so old. Because I was a kid back then, you know.
Okay, cool.
Helen?
I'm going to just add something to that. Those stories, especially what Tom just said, really speaks to part of the culture of our company, that we don't have, you know, a written script of the show, or the music isn't written out. We sort of pass it on. There's a sort of oral tradition of passing on the character, the knowledge of the character, and the way we play the music from one sort of generation of Blue Man and musician to the next within the company. It's really sort of tribal, for lack of a better word, in that way, how we communicate and work the show together. It's really
Okay.
cool thing.
Thank you.
Helen?
My name's Helen Dubois. I'm from Showbiz and Full HD and Mix FM. Thank you so much for coming to South Africa. We've been waiting for months for you to get here. You kind of answered my question a little bit, but I wanted to ask you about new material and if you guys, being part of the group, are allowed, you must have ideas all the time, just from being out and about and whatever. Are you allowed to suggest things, and does the show kind of change and, you know, add stuff in?
Yeah, I'd say that the show really changes all the time. Like every show is different. I think you'd agree, right? It's,
We had an
really-
usher on stage last night.
Yeah.
I wondered about that. She was like,
Yeah, so yeah, the show kind of, it's evolved definitely over the 25 years that it's existed, and a large part of the evolution is the people who make up the group.
Yeah.
And, every person kind of brings in a new influence, and for example, also our group, I think it has a very specific feel to the show, and it might be different than a show you would see in Vegas or New York. And yeah, basically different things happen every night, and sometimes out of those inspirations of the moment come new pieces, and yeah.
and then do those get incorporated into the other, if it's a brilliant thing, does it get incorporated into the other Blue Man Group? Touring the rest of the world, they're like, we're going to add this in. This is becoming a thing. The mothership has spoken, and this is or the fathership, or whatever.
Yeah. No, yeah, it definitely happens that way.
Okay.
Like things kind of spread. We're a very closely interlinked community. Like we know most of the Blue Men, like, and we're very close, and we also circulate around a lot. So I actually did the show in Berlin most of the time, and then lots of people would come through Berlin. I go to the States, and all of us kind of have a history of going through all the different cities and performing in different venues, and start to get to know the whole family.
Cool.
Yeah, that's how things spread.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Edward.
Helen kind of stole my question.
Good girl.
I was curious to know, how do you guys come up with the narrative of your show, and how much leeway do you have for improvisation on the night?
I think a lot of that, it's mixed. There's definitely a creative, I think these days they're calling it the lab in New York, where they create material. There's some of the sort of senior Blue Men in the company who are now artistic directors work together to create material. So they'll workshop things, come up with ideas, play around, and sometimes that trickles down to the show. Other times it's, like Barney was saying, moments that appear in the show, or especially on this world tour, a lot of these places Blue Man Group is very new to. So we're kind of, this round of the tour, we're dipping our toes in the water, seeing how things go, and that'll get communicated back and maybe built upon. So next time we're here, we might have something new to add to that. So we're always sort of evolving the show and creating new things out of what happens often spontaneously. The original show, I think, was the three founders of the company who would try stuff out. They'd have a crazy idea, they would workshop it in front of an audience, see what happened. There's a big culture of experimentation and trial and error, and just kind of giving it a whirl, taking a risk and seeing what happens in the creative process of this company.
Yeah. And because the show, we really vibe off the audience kind of every night. So what we do really depends on the relationship that we're getting from the audience. So that gives us the leeway to kind of, for want of a better word, kind of improvise and kind of go with things. So that's kind of like when we brought that usher up on stage last night. Like, she was so kind of, she was there, and we couldn't ignore her, and so we were like, well, we're saying goodbye to the feast guests, we'll bring you up here too, you know. So that's not in the script, but that's just an example of kind of how we communicate with the audience and how things can just happen spontaneously.
Fantastic. Bronwyn.
I haven't. I was just going to say that I think the improvisation part of the character and that kind of license that we have keeps the guys doing it for so long. A lot of the Blue Men have been in the company for many, many years. I mean, I'm a baby, I'm like 4 or 5 years. But Meridian here has been doing it 10, 11?
Yeah,
Something like
12,
that.
something like that.
And I never thought I'd be able to do the same role for that amount of time. But we have so much not so much freedom. There is, you know, we talk about the Blue Man, he kind of knows the end, he knows the beginning and the end, but he doesn't know how he's going to get there. And yeah, I think that's a really...
Yeah, every show is different.
Every show is it sounds like a cliche, but every show is different, for sure. And like, my favourite scene is when we bring the girl up on stage to have the meal with us, because you don't know what they're going to do. You literally don't know what they're going to do. And that's thrilling. and also a little bit scary. Thanks.
Hi guys.
Hi.
I'm Bronwyn. This is more a question for the creative team. You must have millions of people auditioning for you, musicians, actors. What qualities do you look for in particular people, besides for the highly expressive eyes? But what other qualities are very important for you, for the cast to fit within this brand?
It's a good question. I think they're looking for people who themselves have some of the qualities of the character. The character is a very curious being, a being that's very open to connecting and trying to forge connection, trying to create energy, trying to create joy. And I would say a huge part of the casting process is finding people who are willing to give it a go and sort of explore their own internal personality, to discover that part of them, and to be able to connect that part of themselves to a couple other performers on the stage, and then extend that connection out to the audience. I think at the heart of the Blue Man is that ability. So the whole training process is finding that in yourself, and if you can do that, you've got a chance. And I think also it's similar with musicians, because they go through a unique process as well.
Yeah. So the casting for musicians is not dissimilar to that. I mean, we look for people who have just a raw energy and a real want to work together collaboratively, because when you play in this show, whether you're an actor, whether you're a musician, it works as a group. So there's not a lot of space for ego, and I think that's a huge thing for the band. You've got to really be listening to what everybody else is playing, and you can't step ahead and say, I'm going to do this because I want to do this, because then the show doesn't work that way.
Can I just add to that? Like after every show we do, we actually have a note session, which is, I think, not so common for theater productions. We actually all sit together in a room after the show and we talk about the things that went well, the things that didn't go so well, and we talk directly to each other, which is normally taboo. Actors are never supposed to give each other notes and stuff like that. This is a very different culture. We're very open. We talk to each other. And
very, very honest. Very honest. Very honest.
Sometimes painfully honest.
Thanks.
Congratulations on an amazing show last night. I'm sure everyone who was there can agree that it was phenomenal. A lot of people described it as something they don't really know how to describe. How would you describe it, firstly? And secondly, I just wanted to know, I mean, Blue Man in and of itself has got certain characteristics, but I felt like the three of you still had your own roles and your own personalities. Is that something that's, pre-described, or does that evolve as well through the show?
I'm really bad at answering the first question. I've often tried to describe it. Yeah, it's music and drumming and... second, well, maybe somebody else.
It really depends on the template. I don't know. I guess it's like an experiment. I think of it as an experiment sometimes, just between us three and the band, and that connection between the audience. And we try and find that connection between by kind of making art and through music, through this, kind of the tribal drumming that we do. I'm really into this.
I think the show, we all struggle, as you can see, to describe the show. So rather than describe the show, I think I can tell you why it's difficult to describe. And that's because normally you watch a show, you're in an observer mode, so you're looking at something from the outside, so you can create a description of it because you are observing it. Our show is really something you experience. And so when you're inside of an experience, it's much harder to describe it. It's harder to come up with words for it. Like think of some of the amazing experiences in your life, that perfect sunset or sunrise, anything, falling in love, those things that you can't you can't find the words for, because it's an experience that was so total for your being. And I think that's why the show is difficult to describe. And what was the second part of your question? I have
about the three roles.
Do you have individual personalities as different people?
No, we don't have individual personalities. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Like every Blue Man is different, and it's actually really interesting to watch the show in different places as well, because also Blue Men really evolve over time. To see some Blue Men who have been with the company for a long time, it's just, you're watching a character that has lived in this environment for so long, essentially, and so many, like, there's so much wisdom that can be gathered, and on the flip side, somebody who's brand new is, you know, also has really interesting qualities, and yeah, basically I would say our personal lives always bleed into the show.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, our personalities, not so much our personal lives. Yeah, you know, actually, yeah, when we put on the makeup, that's kind of a moment for us to leave behind everything mundane and enter into the world of the Blue Men. And